Greetings, comrades. My name is Gigantos, and this is another episode of Refuting Anti-Biblical Memes. So, this one, especially with the first meme I'm looking at, it may apply more to East Orthodox, Catholics, and stuff because of which book it references. So I know that my last video was quite popular apparently because I was covering quite a lot of things. I mean, I was almost dipping a toe in a sense to a whole bunch of theology that I can go more in depth on in other videos. And so I decided to do another anti-biblical meme another video refuting anti-biblical memes so that you guys may know how to answer accusations and stuff against the faith. So to get started, the first meme I'm currently looking at is a picture, and I'm gonna be careful with some of these memes. I may have to censor the contents on it if I don't think it's quite suitable. This one is fine, I'll say. It's nothing. It's just a man and woman kissing. It basically says Bible verses you don't hear about in church. It says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you." It says Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. 1, 2 to 3. Now, something we need to realize here is, okay, the Song of Songs. It's usually associated with King Solomon. This book is not meant to be taken literally. Okay, even the Jews back in the day, before they made the canon, they considered it to be allegorical. And there are two ways of interpreting this book. One is the love between a married couple. Okay, so husband and wife, and the love they experience, and it's basically telling you not to really be not to be embarrassed exactly by acts of love towards one another, and also remaining strong for each other. The second way to interpret it is the relationship between God and Israel. And it's a bit strange because if this book was attributed to Solomon, it would have been quite prophetic in a sense. One way of interpreting this book in terms of it being a relationship between God and Israel is how when Israel was taken to Babylon, only a remnant of the original population actually remained loyal to God. And so this was basically about persevering through to the end. Why it's not mentioned in church? That would depend, because not every single verse in the Bible is mentioned in church. Okay, that's quite obvious, especially in the case of Numbers. I mean, half the books in Numbers and like laws in Leviticus, they don't apply to us anymore. So not everything needs to be read in a sense. A lot of it's just for historical context in a sense. When it comes to Song of Solomon's, like this, sure, maybe there may be parts that apply to us still, parts that help us understand things, but not necessarily all of it is read because it's not needed, or perhaps it's for like private reading. So the fact that if this is never read in church, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, don't worry about it. The next one, so it has a picture of a woman with like tape on her mouth or something. It says, "Hush, woman." 1 Timothy 2:11 to 12. A woman should learn in quietness and in full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or assume authority over a man. She must be quiet. Then it says 1 Corinthians 14:34 to 35. Women should remain silent in the churches. They're not allowed to speak, but it must be in submission, as the law says. If they want to inquire about something, they should ask their own husbands at home. For it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church. Now, this is out of massive historical context and our context of this. Something you need to realize is when we're looking at these verses, they don't apply to the woman in general. No, these apply mainly to the priestly vocation. So what's St. Paul when he's writing, what he's effectively saying is women should not be the ones acting the role of priests and bishops. They shouldn't be giving homilies and doing readings and stuff reserved only for the ordained clergy. But to be fair, that also in a sense wouldn't apply to me as well, even as a man, because I do not have the authority to preach, to basically give homilies and stuff as well. I can do readings from the Old Testament and New Testament. That's fine, but I cannot I cannot do anything without the authority of a bishop or priest, in the sense that I cannot do those things unless I am ordained. And so this is actually quite ancient proof for why women were never considered. They were never considered to be ordained by the early church. So there's nothing wrong with this quote exactly. It's just taken out of context. Long story short, women should not assume the role of priests or bishops in the church. They were never considered to be for the vocation of the ministry of the priests and bishops and stuff in the early church either. So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, here's the next one. It shows a picture of Thanos. It's in the scene from Endgame when he's just chilling, like he's like this with his sword over there somewhere, and he says, when a son in Jesus' Bible story came back to his dad, and he says, I could not live with my own failure, and where did that bring me? Right back to you. Although in a sense, I guess that could apply in the other situation, like the prodigal father could have also said, you could not live with your weight of with your own failure. And then he comes back, but that would probably be a bit harsh. But yeah, effectively, yes. I put this in here because I thought it'd be a bit funny just to see Thanos being used as part of a Bible meme. Okay, here's a strange one. So this is by Bible Study Tools. It's effectively a place where you can go and check multiple Bible comparisons. The meme is tied to inspirational Bible verses, and he shows a picture of this woman from this animated woman, for anime, and she's got a hand on her chest, and she's going, "Thou shalt love small breasts," or something. And he says Leviticus 177:13. And for those who love large breasts, they shall fill a man's hand, but for the righteous man who loves small breasts, they shall fill a man's heart. And I would like to tell you that this verse and chapter does not exist. It does not exist. I'm just looking at an online version of the book of Leviticus here, and it says that there's only 27 chapters in Leviticus, so there's definitely not 177. Nowhere in the Bible does it ever mention anything about breasts, as in, big breasts are better than small breasts are bigger than big breasts. Nowhere does it say that. This is just taking the mickey out of this. I know that some people in some memes they try and they almost seem to make it. When they want to make something funny, usually claim it's they quote in a Bible verse or something. Like in the end of my last video when it said the Bible verse that kept me going, lunch, 11:45 or something like that. Okay, they try and make it funny, a bit funny like that. So don't take this as action as fact, because it does not exist, and it's just meant to be an attempt at humor. Okay, don't worry if someone brings this up, just laugh at it. Okay, so it shows a wedding cake, figures on a wedding cake. It shows two women in a wedding dress, and then one of them holding the groom back like this, right, scuff his neck. And he's going, "Ugh." Anyway, it says, Jacob would be like, shows that scene, "Ugh," when he realizes Leah isn't Rachel. And that's effectively true. You need to remember something. When Jacob went to work for Laban for 7 years, at the end of 7 years, he was allowed to marry who he thought was Rachel. However, she was wearing veils and stuff at that point in time, and so he didn't realize that Laban had actually put Leah in her place instead. Because according to Laban, he said he didn't want his youngest to get married without his eldest being married first. And so then later on that night, when he found out when they were meant to be doing something, he found out it was actually Leah, and he was very angry with Laban. And Laban said, "Okay, if you've working for me for another 7 years, you can marry Rachel," and they did. Although I just like to clarify, this does not make polygamy legal or anything, or moral in Christianity or Judaism. Okay, it doesn't. You need to remember something here, especially and I may cover this again if I do cover another post concerning polygamy. Rachel and Leah actually fought for Jacob's attention. I mean, also I guess his servants, a couple of their servants as well that he did impregnate with his other children. But Rachel and Leah fought for Jacob's attention because, even though they were sisters, they wanted his attention, and actually led to them fighting. And even Leah felt slightly depressed because she felt that she wasn't loved as much as Rachel, which was right. She wasn't. And so God opened her womb so that she would have more children than Rachel. But polygamy was tearing the sisterly relationship between Rachel and Leah apart because they were fighting for Jacob's attention, the husband's attention. And that's one of the reasons why polygamy shouldn't be. One of the reasons why polygamy is not allowed, because it damages relationships. And just as you cannot love two masters, for you will love one and hate the other, that applies here too. Here's a picture of the Bible, and it says, "Begins with a talking snake, ends with a seven-headed dragon." Non-fiction. Well, considering atheists believe that that something can come from nothing, things can become complex by themselves, even though that's never been observed. Other than, for instance, and when I mean something's never become more complex, I don't mean a snowflake growing from nothing. I mean they've never observed proteins and nucleic acids congealing not congealing, but forming DNA from so something from just the sea. We've never seen stuff like that happen before. I think it's quite hypocritical for someone to moan about how a talking snake and a seven-headed dragon is in a non-fictional book, because there are plenty of absurdities that atheists believe. It's a bit funny when they try and point out some kind of rationality like that, when even they themselves believe in many irrationalities. Again, just the simple fact that they can believe something can come from nothing, when even in Judeo-Christianity, we always believe that there's always been God, and from Him He produced everything from His own mouth and from His own words and everything. So we don't subscribe to that absurd notion that something can come from nothing. So maybe these atheists should actually check their own beliefs first. Okay, here's the news. So creme.com apparently, this is from a Facebook post, says Brunswick family loses everything in a fire except the Bible. And he has 631 reactions, 37 comments, and 88 shares. And he says, by a guy called says, seems a little passive aggressive if your God allows your house to burn down and he leaves his business card. I'd like to clarify, in such situations, it would probably not be a good idea to present this as some sort of, oh, God save the Bible. Like, this is awesome, this is a sign from God. I'll be a bit hesitant about that, especially, I'm not going to say in general that if something happens and people die, or whatever, but a religious item is spared, then that's necessarily a sign from God. Because, obviously, this isn't, again, according to, yeah, this wouldn't necessarily be seen as a, it doesn't put God in a good light, so I'll definitely not say that this was necessarily an act of God. It may be an act of Satan in order to attempt to undermine God, but don't necessarily believe memes like this in the sense that they are a sign from God, in a sense, because it does seem there's no investigation done into them. It's just people talking, and it can be very easily misinterpreted or be done by another intention. Okay, so just don't necessarily trust these. Exodus 33:1, and the Lord spake to Moses face to face as a man spaketh to his friend. John 1:18, no man hath seen God at any time. Okay. Something you need to realize here is that Moses was the first prophet, and is special in that sense, the first prophet that God spoke with face to face. However, he did not see God's face in that entirety, because as God said, when Moses asked God, "Can I see you?" God said, "You cannot look upon my face in all my glory, because no man can see that and live." This isn't necessarily wrong in that the Lord did speak to Moses face to face, not that Moses ever saw his face. Okay, he was only allowed to look at God's back, and even just being in the sheer presence of God, his face was glowing. Moses did see God, but he did not see God face to face. Okay, you can almost imagine it in the sense that he was kneeling before God, writing down the laws and stuff on tablet, and like right now, it's like right, look. If you were imagine if this was doing an interview, like you were doing an interview about someone, and you were constantly looking down at your book without once looking up at the person's face. Were you still speaking face to face with them, or didn't it count because you were not looking directly at their face? It'll still be face to face, even if you weren't looking at their face directly. So Moses speaking to God face to face, that's still valid here, and no one seeing God at any point in time is in his face like that. That's fine as well, because no one's really ever seen God the Father. We've seen Jesus, yes, and because we've seen Jesus, we've seen God, because Jesus is God. But in the sense of seeing God in all his glory, that's very different, because again, no man can see that and live. Okay, so don't take this sort of stuff out of context. The closest thing we've ever seen to God in his glory, other than just probably like seeing his feet, maybe his glowing feet, or a cloud separating us from God, and we see like the glowing cloud or something, is Jesus during his transfiguration. So this isn't wrong. Okay, none of those quotes are wrong in any sense. So long story short, God did speak to Moses face to face, but Moses did not look upon face gods once. Yet they still spoke face to face. Gives Moses the promised land after 40 years of walking around the desert. Kills Moses before he gets to enter the promised land. And so what? What's wrong with that? Something people need to remember here is that whilst Moses was a brilliant prophet, there was never another prophet quite like him. However, at the end of his life, before they were meant to go into the promised land, when the people were asking for water, he struck a rock and said, "Okay, not exactly, you want water, I will give you water." But he said something along the lines of, "How many times do I have to give you water?" Like, he was very angry, he was very unhappy with them, which is understandable. But the important thing here was that even though when he did strike the rock and it produced water, he was not in a very good mood. He was not speaking properly. He said, "How many times must I give you water?" And for this act of rebellion, well, Moses wasn't perfect, okay? He was not perfect. He already disobeyed God when it came to the covenant of circumcision, which almost got him killed if Zipporah had not circumcised their son, or their second son. And because of that reason, God punished Moses. But that didn't necessarily mean God hated Moses, no, but he needed to discipline Moses, okay? Moses' actions were still disobeying God. And also keep in mind that God had said that, no one should really live over 120 years anymore, even though a couple of them did, but those were exceptions. So God having Moses die before he reached the promised land, that's that's justified. Again, he could see Moses' heart and he saw their imperfections, and they would probably manifest if he kept leading these people. He led these people for 40 years, and they was being ungrateful every step of the way. He was probably not. He was probably he was losing his temper. Okay, this was maybe the beginning of several outbursts, and God did not want people to follow Moses' example in that sense. So he replaced Moses with Joshua. And again, not that God hated Moses. Okay, he did not hate him. He took Moses up to the mountain to look over the promised land and say, "This is the land I'll give the people you have saved." And also God buried Moses himself, and where no one would know. And even Saint Michael and Satan fought for Moses' body, because Satan wanted to turn it into an item of veneration and worship, even into an item of worship, almost like idolatry. And Saint Michael said, "Don't you dare." And again, Moses was present during the Transfiguration. So it was not that God hated Moses. He did not hate him. This was done keeping in mind several things, such as no one should live beyond 120, behave like a proper prophet, you said something, disciplining. Okay, there's nothing wrong with Moses. There's nothing wrong with God taking Moses' life at the end of that. There's nothing wrong with that. Even Moses himself accepted. He said, "Okay, you know what? I understand. I did wrong. I apologize, and I accept your punishment." Genesis 1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament, and let them be for signs." Deuteronomy 18:10. Let no one be found among you who practices divination or sorcery and interprets signs. Well, this is awkward. Not really. They just didn't do research. Firstly, the firmament is a bad translation. It should actually be expanse. When I mean expanse, space. Also, if you look at Genesis, in that part of Genesis, when you read that, it says, "Let them be used as signs for the seasons and other astronomical events and lunar events." What's going on here is that this is divination. So this is a difference between meteorology and astronomy versus astrology. Okay, astronomy is the study of the stars and things in space and stuff. Astrology is trying to use them for divinatory purposes, such as trying to predict the future and all sorts of strange stuff like that. So God putting up the stars and the moon and sun and everything in heaven, that's not divination in any sense. That's just, if you're going to go around planting crops and stuff, you need to have some sort of idea of an idea of what the weather's going to be like, right? You've got a whole harvest year. You've time to plant, time to grow, time to reap, time to let the land recover. And so that's what God was doing. He was just saying, okay, use the stars, moon, and sun to effectively plan your calendar accordingly. This command against divination is completely against all of that. This is trying to predict the future and stuff. Trying to show magic powers in a sense. That does not contradict Genesis at all. This is just a complete out of context again. Okay, this one's a little bit darker. God, I think it's this might be Avatar, I don't know. God, I'll spare Sodom if there are 10 righteous people. Sodom tries to rape angels. God, and it shows some guy like doing this something showing. No. Okay, it's not Avatar. It shows someone like holding a staff, like from some anime, and it shows a beam of fire going. Okay. Yes, the people of Sodom were so corrupt. The people of not just Sodom, but Sodom, Gomorrah, Adama, Bela, Zoar, something. Those 5 cities, the cities of the plain, they were so corrupt that literally 2 strangers come into their midst, and if it weren't for Lot, they would be trying to rape them. Again, as I said in my last video, God does not take the lives of anyone unless it is justified in at least one way. How corrupt do people have to be that they would attempt to try and rape 2 strangers? But that's it. So we've covered a good number of memes here, good anti-biblical ones, or bad anti-biblical ones, really, they're bad quality. Shows mostly a misunderstanding of what the Bible's trying to say. Many things out of context, which I'm not surprised about, because I said in my last video, as that meme said in the last video, anything immoral doesn't make sense or just strange. It's a mistranslation taken out of context or misinterpreted. And yes, that's exactly the case here. Unfortunately, most of the people who make the memes don't spend much time working with actual theology. So maybe a few of them do, but they're definitely going on the wrong path for that. So don't expect them to really put forward any memes that don't actually make much sense or anything. So Don't worry about anti-biblical memes. I'll go through them. Just send me links to them if you want in the comments. I can refute them for you. That's it effectively for this video. So if you like this video, please give it a like. Please share my videos, or please comment you want to think of them. Videos you want me to do. Please subscribe to my channel so you can see more content. And please ring the bell so you can keep up to date with my video releases. Next episode, I'm gonna find some more memes to refute for you guys. That'll be for then. So see you next video, comrades. Until then.